for people to ask, are children going to be affected more? 100%. Because if we've shielded our children at home up till now, but then all of a sudden now we're going to send our children back to school unvaccinated, when we've got even stronger circulating, viral mutations, of course they are going to get affected. So this, diagram actually quite well summarizes the CDC guidelines. And I think one of the biggest things that parents need to make sure is that the school has a mask mandate on, because masking is one of the most effective tools in this entire pandemic. Even in the absence of vaccination, it's a highly effective tool if used properly, universally. That means by everybody in the classroom, the teachers and all of the students, to decrease the chance of inhaling COVID aerosols. And as we know now, that the main form of transmission initially in the pandemic, it was all about, droplet spread. And so we had the, droplet spread is the large particles that we emit when we cough or sneeze. So we were told to cough in our elbow, and the wearing of the mask was to try and, block those particles being expelled and infecting somebody else. Now, what we've found is that, and then some of these droplets rest on surfaces and people can pick them up. And then if they touch their eyes, their nose, their mouth, they can infect themselves. And that's why we had the washing the hands for, 20 seconds with soap and water or alcohol to, get rid of the virus particles and prevent them entering. But with all the super spreading events that we've seen, and the fact that a lot of the people that are spreading the virus are actually asymptomatic, 50% are asymptomatic. So they're not actually coughing or sneezing, yet so many people are getting infected. How? That's because when we are just talking or even just breathing, we emit a fine spray, which looks something like this sort of fine spray you can see from this, can. Or what I would say is a good way to think of it is like cigarette smoke. Everybody's breathing this invisible cigarette smoke that contains viral particles or aerosols, and they are usually less than 5 micron in diameter, as opposed to the big droplets, which are greater than 100 micron in diameter. Now, with these little viral aerosols, they can travel more than 1 to 2 meters, and they suspend in the air and float in the air for hours. So even if you enter a room that is empty without wearing a mask, that room may have a lot of COVID aerosols in there. So ventilation and basically the movement of these COVID aerosols is highly dependent on the airflow in that room. And ventilation, good ventilation with opening the windows and allowing outdoor air to dilute indoor air and reduce the viral load of that room is incredibly important, as is filtration. Now, another tool which a lot of schools are using and is this thing called CO2 monitors. And we've got a picture here of this traffic light indicator CO2 monitor. Now, CO2, carbon dioxide, is what we emit when we exhale, so when we breathe out, and that can be used as a rough guide to try and make people understand how high the viral load is inside that enclosed space. And what we are aiming for is a CO2 reading of less than 800 parts per million. So as you can see on this traffic light monitor, it's green when it's under 800. If it goes into the amber or the red, it means that you need to open the windows, you need to allow outdoor air in to bring that CO2 level down, and that will reduce the risk. So all these tools, and these are being used in a lot of countries in Europe and in America. They're readily available. I think even in India, some of the air purifiers actually have a CO2 monitor on them. And they basically mean that we're not entering that room blind. We know, like if the teacher has that on the wall, they can see, oh, sorry, the CO2 level's going up, we need to do something about it. Now, the Hepa filters, I mentioned that the particles in the aerosols can be less than 5 microns. These Hepa filters are effective at filtering 99.97% of aerosol particles greater than 0.3 microns. So a combination of using a HEPA filter with masking, and having the CO2 monitor, there, and having, a good ventilation with outdoor air coming in, significantly reduces the risk of your child, anybody in that enclosed, or the teacher, actually getting a viral dose of the virus that will lead to an infection. I think the most important thing, and I think this is already mandated in India, which has been a big issue of contention in parts of different states of America. I think the number one is probably masking, and that needs to be universal. Anybody who sets foot on campus needs to be wearing a well-fitted mask, and so you need to find out what are the procedures, around the masking. So I think masking, ventilation, and vaccination are the three key areas. I mean, included in ventilation is filtration, because I've told you the do's over and over again. So the don'ts are pretty clear. I mean, you want to make sure that your child is being well looked after. Their health, their risk profile. That the school is not, like I said, I gave you the example of the teacher. Although the masks were mandated, she took her mask off to read a story to the class and infected half of the classroom. I mean, you need to make sure that whatever the rules are, they're being followed, and that and as I said, making sure that your child is in peak, condition. And the don'ts is definitely not sending your child to school when they're sick. One of the things I also read is, because in the UK they're no longer allowing schools to contact trace, parents are setting up WhatsApp groups so they can inform, if one child is sick, who they've been in contact with. I mean, parents are a very powerful group, because we're all driven by the one, overwhelming desire, and that is to protect our child.